Hey guys, in this video we're going to learn all about conditional statements. The first question that may spring to your head is, what is a conditional statement? Well, right now our programs are pretty boring. All we can do is just add or subtract a bunch of numbers and print the output. Well, what a conditional statement would allow us to do is make decisions based on certain conditions. So there'd be a fork in the road and we could choose if we wanted to go left or right. So let's break this down with a simple example. Let's say I have a deck of 52 cards. Now, I ask you to pick one card. And let's say you pick this card. What would happen now is I have to guess this card by using yes or no questions. So I can only ask you yes or no questions, and based on that, I have to figure out what card it is. So the first question I would ask you would be, well, is it a black card? And if it is a black card, then I would go on to ask you, is it a spade? But if it wasn't a black card, then I would ask you, is it a diamond? So now let's play this out. So, hey, is this a black card? Well, you would say yes, it is a black card. Now, because I know it's a black card, I'm not going to ask if it's a diamond, right? I don't need to because diamonds are red cards. So I can just go ahead and ask you, is it a spade? And well, if you say yes, then great, it's a spade. If you say no, then I know that it's a clubs. So this is kind of how conditional statements work as well. In this example, my decision to ask you if it was a spade was based on this condition of whether or not it was a black card. So if, for example, this card was not black and it was red, and you said, no, it's not a black card, well, then I wouldn't bother asking you if it was a spade, right? I would ask you if it was a diamond or a heart, whichever one I want to. So again, coming back to conditional statements, what they allow us to do is they allow us to make certain decisions based on certain conditions. So when a condition is true, the computer does something. If the condition is false, the computer will do something else. So how does this look like in Python? Let's switch to my computer screen and I'll show you how it works.
So conditional statements in Python always start with an if and are followed by the condition. So right now I'm just going to put an underline for the condition because we're going to fill it in later. And then the condition is followed by a semicolon. Now, whatever follows after the if should be indented. And whatever is in the indented portion is what the computer will execute, so be it that the condition is true. So if the condition is true, whatever you type after the if, and if it's indented, then the computer will execute that. So right now, I'm just going to, again, put an underline to fill in what we want to do if the condition is true. And after this, you can leave the conditional statement like this. But another thing that you can do is you have the option to add an else statement to the if statement. The else statement means that if the above condition is false, so if this condition, which we will fill in soon, turns out to be false, then we will do something else. We will do whatever is in this underlined portion. So now let's go ahead and fill in the conditions. So we were talking about the cards, guessing the suit of the card. So let's say I'm going to write it in plain English and then we're going to fill it in into programming language. So we said if card is black, then ask if card is spade. Else ask if card is diamond. So this was all that we did. And again, what's happening here is if the card is black, so this is the condition, so if the card is black turns out to be true, then we will next ask if the card is a spade. Else, so if this is false, then we will ask if the card is a diamond. And notice how this is indented. That means that it is followed if this condition is true. And again, this is indented to show that else, whatever follows, you have to execute whatever is indented. So now let's go ahead and actually fill it in with code. So let's store the data in variables. So the card color that we had drawn was a red card. Then the card suit was a diamond. The card number or card face was the number 2. So how will I go ahead and execute this? So I will first replace this in programming language, obviously, because right now this is just in plain English if card is black. So in the last video, we learned how comparison operators work. And when we're working with conditional statements and we're trying to make a condition, we always use comparison operators. So over here, we would want to use the equal to comparison operator. So we would say if card color is equal to black, ask if card is a spade. Else, ask if card is a diamond. Now over here, one interesting thing to note is that we're actually introducing another if statement. So when you have an if statement rested inside another if statement or a conditional statement inside another conditional statement, it's called a nested statement, a nested conditional statement. So how would this look in code? Well, I'm going to type it out before deleting the line. So it would look something like this. If card suit is equal to spade, print spade. Else, print club. So basically what we're doing now is, I'm going to go ahead and delete this line. So what we're doing is, if the card color is black, then we know it has to be a spade or a club because those are the only 2 possible black colored suits. So we just have to ask if it's either a spade or a club. So you can put spade here or you can put club here. I just chose to put spade. So if the card suit is a spade, so if it is equal to spade, then print spade. Else, print club. And we do the same thing under the else statement because we have another if statement over here. So if card suit is a diamond, then print diamond. Else, print hearts. So now if we go ahead and run this, it should print diamond. So I'm going to run this. And okay, I need to quit my terminal. So I'm going to open a new terminal. Okay, so now if we go ahead and we run this. Okay, so I have some invalid syntax. Oh, I forgot to delete this line. Remember, this line, it does not mean anything. I just typed it to make the understanding easier. So I'm going to go ahead and delete this. And now if I run it, there you go. It prints diamond. So this is how if-else statements work. So this is how basic conditional statements work. But one important thing to remember is that you don't always need to have the else clause. You can just have the if clause and that's more than enough. Because sometimes it's not required. Maybe you just need to check if a variable is equal to 1 value. You don't need to check if it's equal to 2 or 3 values. In that case, you don't really need this else clause. But let's take an example where there aren't just 2 possible outcomes. Right now, there were only 2 possible outcomes because the card suit was either red or black. And if it was black, it was either a spade or a club. And if it was red, it was either a diamond or a heart. So that's why we only needed to use if and else. But there is another clause that can be added. So let's move on to that. So I'm going to create a new file. Gonna save it as elif.py and save. So let's say we have someone's marks from an exam and their marks are 87. Now, we know that 90 to 100 is an A. We know that 80 to 90 is a B. We know that 70 to 80. Well, okay, I'm actually doing a mistake here. This should be 89 and this should be 79 is a C. Then 60 to 69 is a D. And let's say 40 to 59 40 to 59 is an E, and anything below, so 0 to 39 is an F. So let's say these are the grade boundaries, and we want to write a program that will print a student's grade when the person enters the marks. So how would we do this? Well, we could just keep writing if clauses inside if clauses, but that would look really messy. So instead, what we can do is we can write if marks are greater than equal to 90, print A. Now, here comes the interesting part. We want to say else, so if marks are not greater than equal to 90, but are greater than 80, print B. So how do we do this? Well, it's actually called else if. But in Python, we don't write it like this. We write it as elif. We just join the two. And we say elif, and then elif always has to follow with a condition. So you have to put a condition after elif. It's not like else, where you don't need to put a condition. So elif marks are greater than equal to 80, print B. And then again, you can use an elif statement. So you can use as many elif statements as you want. There's no limit to it. So elif marks are greater than equal to 70, print C. And then again, elif marks are greater than equal to 60, print D. And one more elif marks are greater than equal to 40, print E. Now, one really important thing to remember is that when you're using elif statements, you need to conclude with an else statement. So what this else statement does is that if none of these conditions are true, these conditions over here, that like these ones, if none of them are true, then you do what follows after the else. So that means that if they didn't get above 40, and they didn't get above 60, didn't get above 70, didn't get above 80, didn't get above 90, it clearly means that they failed. So over here, you just have to type print F. And that is how conditional statements work with elif clauses. So this might be a little tricky to grasp at the beginning if you're completely new to programming, but with practice, you will understand it better. Another thing is, I'm assuming that the marks entered are between 0 and 100. I'm not assuming that they're above 100. So if someone accidentally entered abnormal data or erroneous data, and suppose they entered 104, and that's not possible because it's 90 to 100, then you should also have an elif clause in here that checks if it's greater than 100. And if it is, then you should print, please enter in correct marks. As a print statement, you could output an error basically. So that's how this works. And this is pretty much it for conditional statements. But before we finish this video, I just wanted to show you some incorrect usages of conditional statements. All of these will work. It's not that they won't work. It's just that one of them is more artfully written and it's written in a better style. So over here, when you say A is equal to true, and then you say if not A, so if A is not true, print no, else print yes. So this is kind of like the other way around. You don't really need this not operator. You just need to say if A, print yes, else print no. And it's as simple as that. So this is just better programming, in other words. Both of these will work. Don't get me wrong. They both will work perfectly fine. It's just that this is better to read and this is considered better programming. So another one is that if you say B1 is equal to true and B2 is equal to true, if B1 is true, so this basically just means if B1 is true. You can also, if suppose a variable is a Boolean expression, then you don't need to say if B1 equals true. You can just say if B1 because it's already a Boolean expression. So if B1, that means if true, and if true, print both. But there's an easier way to do this, which is using the and operator and saying if B1 and B2 are both true, print both. So once again, this is just better programming because it makes it easier to read, it makes it easier to understand, and it's just more pleasing to look at, in other words. And lastly, there's also, if you have C equals false, and you say if C, so if C is true, click pass. So basically what pass does is it does nothing. It prevents you from raising an error. Because if I were to delete this and run it, there would be an error that you provided an if clause, but you didn't give the computer anything to do if the if clause was true, if the condition in the if clause was true. So you need to put something there. So sometimes programmers put pass while they're coding so they can come back to it later. But remember that if you ever make an if clause and then you put pass, it's bad programming because you made the if clause to do something if this was true, not so that you could just say pass and then put something in the else statement. Instead of that, you can say if not C, print no. Because remember, not just negates whatever C is. It reverses it, pretty much like else. So else will take the opposite of the condition, and not makes the condition opposite. So if not is kind of like saying else to the original if condition. This might be a little tricky to understand, but if it's difficult, just pause the video, take a few minutes to understand it, and see if it makes sense, because this is really important when programming. So that is it for this video.